So I've
about
been
my
wanting to
favorite
talk
person.
about this for a while because I thought it was relevant to what's been happening, right? So Tulsi Gabbard went on Megyn Kelly's podcast because Megyn Kelly's now, I think, a free agent. And she spoke about a couple things. She spoke about Syria and she spoke about AOC. And we're going to start with what she said on AOC first. This is part of what the interview was. It was like a 2-hour interview. And she mentioned that AOC, now that she's been in Congress, it's clear that she's towing the line and playing the same partisan game. So let's hear some of this.
She ripped on you after you voted present on the first impeachment vote. You'd already left by the time the second impeachment came. Who knows if Trump had won re-election? How many impeachments could we have had? We could like once every quarter. Anyway, you voted present. I understood your explanation was basically you thought he hadn't behaved well, but you weren't ready to say it was an impeachable offense, that phone call with the Ukrainians.
And primarily just to add quickly to that because look, we're in the midst of a campaign for president, and I saw shenanigans on both sides. Democrats and Republicans were playing the partisan line on this whole issue of impeachment. Both sides unwilling to really be reasonable and actually examine the facts. And therefore, what the Democrats are doing, we're pushing towards actually trying to undermine the American people's ability to make the decision for themselves. And obviously, I was running for president, and I believe that Donald Trump should not be reelected as president. And I was running to bring the leadership that I could bring, but understanding the importance of the American people making that decision and not setting this precedent of that our founding fathers actually warned against. If impeachment were pursued for partisan interest, then you're undermining the foundations of our democracy, where voters will lose faith that their votes actually matter. Because what's the point if you vote and you elect somebody and the losing party immediately starts to move to throw that person out of office? What's the point of having an election? Exactly. And that was the point that I was trying to make.
All right. So what'd you think of her ripping on you for voting present, saying, we are set here to lead?
She didn't listen to what I was saying. I honestly, I didn't give it much mind.
She's somebody who does buck her own party. She comes at it she's farther left than somebody like Pelosi. So she's no way a Republican. She doesn't have positions that, she could work across the aisle on for the most part. But what do you think? What do you think of her? She gets a lot of attention. She's smart at using social media, but very, very polarizing.
Look, I think when it comes right down to it, even as her positions may differ from the Democratic leadership in some areas, now that she's been in Congress for a little while, it's become clear that, she's towing the line and playing the same partisan game that too many other politicians are playing. And, there's been some recent examples of that where there have been some overtures. I think recently Ted Cruz reached out on Twitter and said, hey, let's work together on an issue. And she basically said, screw you.
You tried to murder me, she said.
Exactly.
Oh, Lord.
So
she's such a drama queen.
Yeah. You could say that. I think that's been one of the, you've seen it from her. We've seen it from some other people in the aftermath of January 6th. Unfortunately, members of Congress painting themselves as the victim and drawing attention to themselves rather than saying, okay, how can we be a part of the healing solution to help unify a country that's been so torn apart?
Wow. That is awesome. Yeah.
So on 2 points, the first point I want to make is regarding the impeachment process. I was entirely with Tulsi Gabbard on impeachment. In fact, I wanted her to vote present.
You did call
because it was the right thing to do. A lot of people on the left were completely against us for stating that, but that was the right call. And I 100% agree with that still to this day, because she's absolutely right. It was all from the moment Donald Trump was elected, they wanted to impeach him. Yeah. And that it became this game of partisan football and like, oh, Trump, anti-Trump, pro-Trump, and this whole thing. And it wasn't for the things that they could have impeached him on, because they would have had to impeach themselves. Because if it was for the emoluments or any actual significant thing, then they would have inculpated themselves. So it was just a game, and I thought we were wasting money, we were wasting time, it was a distraction. And so that is exactly the way I saw it too. And when she voted president, the media, AOC, the squad, the progressives were all like, I can't believe that, how dare you vote and it was just this vomiting of like vitriol at Tulsi Gabbard for the wrong thing. I mean, there are other things I don't agree with her on, but this I was 100% on it.
I gotta say that I wanted Tulsi to vote no. Fiorella said she should vote president. Like, Fiorella literally said she should vote president, and she did. And I was so proud of her for doing that, because originally when she agreed to go along with the impeachment, I was mad for two reasons. Number one, the regime change candidate cannot be siding with Democrats, establishment Democrats, who want to impeach a president who forced a regime change and a coup in Ukraine and then financially profited off them. In other words, the sins of the leadership of the Democrats, Nancy Pelosi, Adam Schiff, Mitt Romney was even involved there too as well, Joe Biden, their sins were way worse than Donald Trump trying to kind of manipulate a situation with a phone call like he did. And I also want to point out too, fam, that after AOC went on to go out there and complain and put Tulsi Gabbard on blast.
We are sent here to lead.
Yes. Less than 3 days later, she was or 3 or 4 days later, she was in Venice Beach at a protest, and she literally said Tulsi's words that she'd been saying on the campaign: our foreign policy is our domestic policy.
Yeah.
You know, when you almost fall out of the chair, that's what almost happened. Really, it was just, and to see people like AOC in Congress right now and people on the left going, AOC 2024, and they're happy that Tulsi's Gabbard is gone. I mean, just the way Gabbard was, what she's talking about, the way she carries herself, her knowledge, her leadership. And once again, I don't agree with her on a lot of things, fam, but this is the type of people we need there that want to work across party lines. And she even pointed out, AOC, she can't work across party lines.
Right. The whole like theatrics of Ted Cruz. Look, I don't like Ted Cruz, but he was actually like, she just, because that's her whole shtick. Her whole shtick is to live off like hating Republicans. Yep. That and Megyn Kelly was wrong, and Tulsi corrected her in a way, in the Tulsi way, very polite. That, you know, like AOC is, you know, to the left of the Democratic Party, right? Like, and Tulsi's like, actually, you know, if you actually closely watch what she actually is doing, she really just toes the party line. And that's something it's important that somebody else says, because this is somebody that, you know, still worked within the system. Tulsi Gabbard, as a Democrat, was in the Democratic Party, and she didn't toe the party line. And you can tell she didn't, because she was effectively pushed out, smeared, and that happens to every single person that attacks the national security state, attacks the military industrial complex, and has nuanced, independent points of views that aren't so quickly manipulated into this partisan, like, oh yeah, Democrat, oh yeah, Republican. And by working across the aisle, it shouldn't mean that you're just going to give up and become like a Republican because you just want to work with them so bad. That's not what it means. Yeah. That it means basically that if there is, you have to work together to get something done for Americans, you have to fucking do it. Like, that's it. Like, you're going to have to work with people you don't like in any field in life. So I don't understand why it's so difficult.
But I have a question for you, fam, because this is something, and it's got to irritate you too as well now, when, you know, Megyn Kelly's even talking about AOC being, oh, she's so far left. How come it's considered to be far left when you have no stance on civil liberties and protecting civil liberties? Yeah. When you have no knowledge of foreign policy and understanding how to do it, and you actually okay imperialism, you okay the bombing and you okay it by being silent at times.
Right.
How come that now is considered to be, that the squad is considered to be the furthest left, and they're not even looking into elections, they're not even pointing out the framework of elections whatsoever? Those three things, how can that could be considered far left? Those are my three main issues, and I consider myself a leftist.
Is she a Republican, or is she right?
She was a Republican, but she's more of like, she goes between the neoliberal, and the Republican.
She got into it big with Donald Trump. She left Fox. She went to MSNBC or CNN. Now she left there too as well.
So yeah, I could see why she thinks that AOC is
center right. But why in general is that considered? Are they considered the most leftist now?
I think it's the shtick. I think it's all part of the game that's being played here, right? Because anybody outside of the U.S. could tell you AOC is like left of center at best. And the thing is,
she talks a big game, though.
She talks a big game on social media, but her actions, her policy, her legislation is absolutely lacking any sort of leftist, because you have to be anti-imperialist. And that's what these people think. And somehow these neoliberals and these neo-progressives, they literally think that, they dismiss foreign policy. So like the people they admire only focus on domestic policy. Cori Bush, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, you can look at even Rashida, like they barely touch on foreign policy. And when they do, the Democrats of course attack them, so then they don't ever do it again. Like when they talk about Palestine, that always happens. And so it's part of the shtick to think that AOC is the far left, because then Republicans are like, look, she wants to cut your civil liberties, she wants to amp up this cancel culture and all this stuff, so they can attack her via that, and then she can come back and say, oh, they're racist or anti-trans or anti-this. So that's how the game lives on, because you're believing that she is a representation of something she is not, and at the same time you're believing that the Republican Party is an entire monolith when it's actually kind of fragmenting too. And so there's this populist movement that's coming out on the left that's also anti-imperialist, and there's also some of that coming on the libertarian end. People like Tulsi Gabbard are not unique to the Democratic Party. Some could argue that she could be in the Republican Party as a libertarian or something like that. But she's still is to the left because she believes in some social safety nets. And and it's those things. So she's a very difficult figure to put in a box. You can't be like, oh, Tulsi is this and that, and like it's black and white with her. It's not. She looks at the issues in a very nuanced way, and that's why I like her, because I tend to look at things like that too. And I think that's the way we should look at things. Not, oh, well, I'm a Democrat, so if a Republican said that, I'm not even going to consider it. That's not how things work. Or I'm a socialist, so if a libertarian says it, I'm just gonna not even look at it. No, that's not how things should work. It's the truth first. Yeah.
It's called being an adult, fam. That's why I love Tulsi. And fam is on fire today. And I just think that, fam, that we have to counteract this. Johnny, I think so too, as well, as when anybody says that these people are to the left, we just got to say that's not left, it's bourgeois left. That's it.
We have to keep
It's bourgeois left. Let's establish what the squad is. They are bourgeois left. They are far bourgeois left.
They could capitulate to the Democrats. So.
Yeah, they consistently capitulate and toe the party line, just like she said. And she called it out. And she was nice. She's like, yeah. When she said she's a drama queen, it's like, Tulsi, come on, like, slay her. Like, no, it's just that is who she is. And it's just like, I would have been like, yeah, she deserves a Golden Globe for Best Actress in America's season 2021 finale. Like, that's literally like how I have come to see her. And this has been in a short amount of time. Like 2 to 3 years ago, we were all about AOC. 4 years ago now, but
I mean, it was funny. Shanda asked me in the show. She had the picture of me and AOC, and I said I was so impressed when I went to that campaign headquarters. They were organized, grassroots, ready to go. All the Hindu speaking people come over here. All the Spanish people speaking over here. Yeah. All the English people come here. They had good pizza. I had 4 slices. I might have had 4.5. It was delicious. It was good from the Bronx. But once again, they were so organized. I was so impressed. But we saw signs then, fam, that stuff was happening. And here come these leechy Democratic lawyers and establishment fingers coming on in. Let's show this, because this is the real reason.
This is the
real reason why I supported Tulsi.
I am glad to hear that some of my former colleagues in Congress are speaking out against the recent unconstitutional airstrikes in Syria. But they're ignoring the bigger issue. The regime change war the United States continues to wage in Syria, using Al-Qaeda, al-Nusra, HTS terrorists as our proxy ground force, and who now occupy and control the city of Idlib, imposing Sharia law and cleansing the area of most Christians and religious minorities. The Biden administration continues to use our military to illegally occupy northeastern Syria to, quote, take the oil, as Trump so crassly but honestly put it, violating international law. A modern day siege of draconian embargo and sanctions similar to what the Saudi-US alliance employed in Yemen, is causing death and suffering for millions of innocent Syrians, depriving them of things like food, medicine, clean water, energy, warmth, and making it impossible for the Syrian people to try to begin to rebuild their war-torn country.
Bam.
I mean,
wow.
It's just on the money, and it sucks because she's not in Congress. We live in a shit.
I'm glad
reality.
that right-winger's gone, fam.
Yeah, aren't you glad that turf is so gone?
Go get a job on Fox.
Yeah. So, I mean, okay. First of all, she said, as Trump, we're in there to take their oil, as Trump so crassly but honestly put it. And that is something we have to remember about Donald Trump. What he did is, in spite of himself, he was brutally honest in his beliefs. And so, like, America, the neoliberal, democratic, we are justice and truth, didn't like that, because that is who they are. That is what this country and the defense industry and the corporations and these corrupt politicians have made this country. That is what this country is. But the Democrats and the neoliberal establishment didn't want people to see that. And inadvertently, even though Trump was doing the same thing that they've been doing forever, he was honest about what he was doing. Like, he called it what it was. He didn't say, we're going to go in there, spread humanitarian aid. He was like, nah, we're going to take their oil. And it's like, okay, well then... that is what you're doing. So own it.
Honest.
So own him.
Yeah.
And they did it. And so that's one of the reasons why he was pushed out and he was so hated by everybody. But Tulsi hit on an important point about sanctions. And we talked about Vanessa Beeley about sanctions with Vanessa Beeley yesterday, and she explained like just how awful it is to these people, innocent people, how villages, how families have been killed by these bombs, and how it's not just the United States but Israel constantly bombing Syria, and they barely, like, it's a regular occurrence to them. And we were talking even before the show, like, imagine if Americans experienced like half a day of what Syrians experience on a daily basis. And we have AOC and all these congressional reps talking about their trauma, like for freaking Horde Man coming into the Capitol building and like all this stuff. Like, it just, by comparison, it is disgusting the way we are so self-centered, and it's the epitome of American exceptionalism.
Wow, it is. And today's guest wrote that book, American Exceptionalism. And it is so true, fam. Just going back to the Donald Trump stuff, Donald Trump got in trouble for more for telling the truth than he did lying. Plain and simple. Like, as he so crassly and honestly put it. That's why they hate it. That's why in this particular video right here, she tells so much.
Yeah.
And she even said at one point when she was talking about the sanctions and everything, when she said warmth, Vanessa Beeley told us yesterday they can't even get the proper, resources to get gas, electricity in there. And people are freezing.
She's on like a 4 hours on, 4 hours off, and like other cities next to her streets are like 2 hours on of electricity, 2 hours
off.
Like, imagine living like that for one fucking day, America, and then tell me that we were justified in attacking this Iranian fact. Like, we have zero grounds to be there. Period.
And this is true left. This is true left right here.
Right.
This
is anti-imperialism.
This is true left. And I think what we need to do, fam, moving forward, I just had an idea, is that we got to constantly just stay on Syria every single day, because it looks like it's going to be amped up. So the small stories in Syria, we got to bring truth to light, ladies and gentlemen. We got to share. We got to talk about what's going on. The horrific behavior is even amped back up since Donald Trump left and Biden went in there. Donald Trump wanted to stay just to keep the oil, right? You know what I'm saying? And he was actually trying to move away from the northern part, pull away from the Kurds. But everything is re-amplified again. New bases are being opened up. New military equipment's coming in. So we have to talk about this constantly. So,
yeah, and I'd love it if somebody like Vanessa Beeley went on Tulsi's podcast, because I think that would be a very great conversation to be had. Now, both of them are called Assadists for simply wanting to stay away from Syria, and I think that's something to be said of how the propagandists here are still managing to shape the story, like Assadist. They're even we're being attacked for being Assadist, which is ridiculous, because if you understand foreign policy, you know that this is more of like leave them be. leave this country be. You've done enough damage, America. Like, get out. And the fact that she's mentioning this when nobody else, this is what AOC should be doing. This is what I want to see the squad doing. They are not doing that. They're not even doing a tweet. The only one who did was Ilhan. And hers still was like Assad is a dictator and all this crap.
Manufacturing consent inside there.
Right.
They're supposed to have elections late April or May coming up,
which is scary.
And I did ask Vanessa Beeley. I said, "What is the support she has from her people, the Russians, the Iranians?" And it's still all there, is what she's saying. But we'll see with the elections coming up and whatnot. And America can't even get its own elections right. They should stay out of other elections. I will assume that they will try to be in there saying that those elections that Assad won were all phony, fake fugazi, just like they did with the whole Maduro situation, and named Juan Guaido interim president. Fam, I name you interim president of the United States. I'm pushing Kanye out. I'm pushing you in.
Sweet.
Yes.
Everybody, you're in for a great time.